Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Calm is Hot. I'm your host, Jade, pronouns she, her, and I'm excited to bring a very special friend and a guest who I've known for a few years now, who works in the real estate industry in the Bay Area of California. So, welcome, friend.
Thank you, Jade. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, would you like to introduce yourself, tell everybody just a little bit about who you
Yeah,
are?
yeah. My name's Houston Garcia, pronouns he, him. San Francisco native. My nickname is Houston, not from Texas. That's how I like to tell people and introduce myself. No relation to Texas. But yeah, born and raised here. Went to school down in Santa Clara, and right out of getting out of school for poli sci, I went into real estate kind of unknowingly. One of my friends said, "Oh, you might like real estate." I said, "Okay, why not?" And it's what I've been doing ever since, and I actually love it. So I guess that's what I'll be talking about today.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for giving us a little context as to who you are. Now, because you grew up in the Bay Area, you have probably seen it change.
Quite a bit, yeah. The older I get, the more rapid the changes are, and the more obvious, I think, too, especially.
Yeah, yeah. I only moved to the Bay Area like 6 years ago. And when I moved, there was still a little more artistic culture present, and um, I think it was like just a little different. And now it's just a tech city, I feel. And I don't want to do a disservice by saying that to the artists and the people who are local community members who are working to preserve some of the beautiful pockets of San Francisco that we have, but it does feel like overwhelmingly things are moving in in a tech focused direction, in a business focused direction, like you said, so quickly.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's always changing. I still think San Francisco has, and the Bay Area as a whole, has its soul. But I think that'll be difficult to change. But it's always still, like a transitory city. It's very, becoming like New York or London, that sort of city, where it's like a lot of people are coming and going.
Yeah, yeah. And especially going because of the pandemic. People
Yeah,
are
yeah,
like, why would I pay $4,000 a month of rent if I can work from home?
yeah.
A
And
lot of people left.
yeah, and as a side note, I think a lot of the, people that have stayed in San Francisco are the people like the artists, small businesses, people who have roots here, their families were born and raised here like third, fourth generation that are, kind of fighting to stay here. So I think that's, they keep the essence of San Francisco alive.
That's so encouraging to hear. And I
Yeah.
hear that from my students as well, who were born and
Yeah.
raised and living in the Bay. But I do want us to kind of dive in. I
Yeah.
always get ahead of myself and I could talk about the city forever.
Yeah, I can too.
Um, and we do have a very clear focus today, which is talking about the housing market and real estate and what it is that you do here in the Bay. So before we dive into that, for folks who might know you or might not yet know you, what is something that may be surprising to them to learn about you?
Spanish is my first language. So I'm half Latino, half white. And I didn't learn English until I was in, I think, like preschool or kindergarten. So learned Spanish, only spoke that for a few years, and then learned English in school, just to have a second language. So it's always kind of funny to, mess with friends like, oh, I can speak Spanish, and they don't believe me. It's like it's my first language. So yeah,
Oh, nice. That's
yeah, and
awesome.
yeah, I like to keep it up, that side of my, heritage. Only speaking Spanish to certain family members and keeping it up with, certain friends, and then English with everyone else. So yeah,
That's
just a
beautiful.
daily way to remind myself, where I come from and who I am.
I could not be more excited and proud for you. I feel like our heritage and where we come from is such an integral part of who we are in terms of our culture, and
Hmm.
recognizing that. And I want to call attention to you saying Bay Area native.
Mhm.
right? And that term, like, who really is a Bay Area native? And I would argue, definitely not me. And unless you are indigenous, right? Like, I think there's not to call you out or not to,
No, 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 of course.
but I think a lot of people use that term, and it's like we can look to our heritage and kind of see where we
Hmm.
come from, see where our family comes from. And for you to be proud of that, for you to recognize that and embrace it is
Yeah.
so beautiful, and not want to lose it, but to have a desire to cherish it. I really respect and admire that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful, especially because living in the United States, so many of us experience that need and that pressure to fit in and to
Hmm.
assimilate. And I'll be
Yeah.
talking about that later on in the show, but I'm proud of you for owning it,
Thank you.
embracing it, being you. Yeah. Now let's dive in.
Okay.
Okay. So we have identified that you work as in the real estate industry
Yep.
in San Francisco and Greater Bay Area. What motivates you to do this?
I think, obviously it's a very fast-paced profession, and compensation's well. But I think really just enjoying the work. I really wouldn't be doing it if I didn't enjoy it. Because I went to college for political science. Decided not to go to law school because that's the track I was going to go into, with for law school to go into politics. And I thought, okay, that's not my passion. It's not really what I want to do. I can't see myself doing this for 30, 40 years. And just fell into real estate because when my friend said, oh, try it, you might like it. I thought, oh, sales, don't like that, but I like real estate. It's always been something I'm interested in. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I guess I'll talk about it soon, maybe the next prompt. But yeah, it's just been something that I really, really enjoy, the actual work of real estate. I know what I'm doing and I love doing it. So,
That's awesome. And you literally do not have to like regulate yourself. If you're excited
oh,
to
okay,
keep
okay.
going, you can be like, let's roll into the next one. I'm ready.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Um, so that does lead us to our next prompt, which is the question, how has your experience been working in real estate in the Bay Area?
Yeah, so I would say it's very geared towards, and not to be ageist or anything like that, it's very geared towards middle-aged people, I would say. So the average age of a realtor is around 55, like average age. And this is a survey done like a year or two ago by like the National Association of Realtors. And it's true. I see a lot of colleagues that are, I would say some that are younger, they're 20s, some even, 18 right out of high school, but the majority are, mid 50s, early 60s. And quite a few of my colleagues are actually former attorneys, corporate attorneys, and they hated, they went into law, they were attorneys for 5, 10 years. And then they said, this is, too much. Compensation is great, but horrible quality of life. Let me transition to something more, that should be more a similar line of work that's like has a legal background in real estate, but it's not as life draining, I would say. Just no life like as in corporate law. So a lot of them come from that legal background, and yeah, they're 50s, 60s, but it's interesting to see that, to see what will happen with the shift, the generational shift. It's like, okay, if all these realtors retire in the next 5, 10 years that are the everyday realtors, what's going to happen? So anyone that's under 40, I would say it's considered young in real estate. So in 15, 20 years, I'll still be like young, or maybe like, average age. But yeah, I thought, the younger, the better. And it's really a business, industry where the longer you're in it, the better for your business, but also the more you learn and the more you see too. So a lot of people told me it's great that you got in really young. I shouldn't have waited 10, 20 years, right? And I do see that from some colleagues that are, my peers in their 20s that are, doing this while they're, on the younger side of things too, and they're in it, to last. If you make it after the first 2 years, then you're usually fine. So, I went into real estate right out of college. First 2 years are like, you make it or you break it. And a lot of people just want to do real estate, and they think it's, they see everything on Instagram, all the, they think, oh, you're selling something every week. That's not the reality of it. So if whether you're, on the younger side of the curve or already established career, just transitioning from like tech or some other sales job into real estate, the first 2 years are the hardest, and it's make or break it. And I've been doing this now since November of 2015. So I guess this will be year 7, 6, something like that. So it's past the 5-year mark. So yeah, I think, I've definitely established like who I am and who my clientele are. My mentor, one of my mentors would always ask me, who are your people? Right. And he would say it in a joking way. It's like, who are your people? Right. And I thought, okay, this sounds like a silly question, but the sooner you find who your people are, meaning like who you like to work with and who are the clientele that you attract, um, you know, that's your niche. Like you'll enjoy working with who you work with, and they'll enjoy working with you. So that's kind of, where my passion from real estate stems from, really. So finding my people. And it takes a while to find yourself and then who you like to work with. So it's a learning process, really.
That's so cool and insightful. I feel like there's like a million different things that popped into my head that I want
I know,
to
yeah.
speak
Yeah.
to. Because that was so action packed and there's so many layers there. I mean, we've got the whole like age phenomenon. And I certainly don't want to be discouraging to anyone who is older, who's looking to get into this field. Like you said, 40 is considered young. And I think
Oh,
that is actually, I don't know if this is the case, but I would argue just like America's obsession with youth,
mhm,
it feels almost comforting to hear that like 40 is young in this industry. It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And I know that during the pandemic, a lot of people were talking about getting a real estate license because they were like,
Hmm.
what can I do? How can I survive? Like,
Yeah,
how can I provide myself and those who
yeah,
I love with housing? I think a lot of people were really put in positions of scarcity, of
yeah.
fear of loss of just a basic human right, which is like housing and
Where you live.
protection. And
Yeah.
I think that motivated a lot of people who I saw on social media say like,
Hmm.
I'm quitting my job and I'm getting my real estate
Yeah.
license, or like I'm not doing this whole dance anymore. I'm if capitalism wants to fight dirty, I will, you know, put on my gloves, get my real estate
Hmm.
license, and I'll take care of myself and my family or whatnot. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of different motivating factors why I feel and see people pursuing this, but I'm excited to know that like it's an industry that you can still get into almost
Oh,
at
yeah.
any age in life.
Definitely. I'd actually argue the opposite. Kind of what you said, where it's, like 40 is refreshing here that it's considered young. I would say it's easier to get in, if you're 40 or 50 or 60, into real estate, just to shift. Because, like I said, those corporate attorneys that were in the mid 50s transition very easily, just like a seamless, it's like you have to build your business, but you have some clientele already, your sphere of influence, your friends, your family, you kind of grown and nurtured, the longer you're alive, the more people you have in your life, right? So you kind of build who you are. I would say it's much harder, very, very difficult for younger people, right out of high school or college to just, go into real estate, because I think it's really just a life experience thing. It's a big learning curve. So, you learn about the business, but it's also you learn about yourself and who you are and how you work, because in this industry, no one's going to tell you what to do. That's the worst part about it. So if you're younger, you usually work on a team, if or find a mentor, right? But for me, I found a mentor and I was never on a team. I was never part of like, someone's like, junior agent. I was just on my own. So that was very difficult. But I learned a lot just by having a mentor and, learning the pros and the cons, the mistakes, the successes. But I think that's what a lot of younger people, find difficult in real estate, where it's like, hey, it's like, I don't know who I am yet. And it's a really steep learning curve. It's like how to be my own boss, discipline myself, because no one's going to tell you what to do. You either sink or you swim. And it's really trial and error for those first, 2 years or so. And it's hard to, be in an industry where no one's going to pay you unless you make a sale. No one's going to tell you, if you mess up, unless you have that mentor, team, really. So that's why I think it's more difficult for the younger crowd, really. Getting a
mm,
real estate license is easy, but like actually being in real estate and doing it and disciplining yourself and lasting, that's the difficult part, really.
mm.
Yeah.
And building a network of people
Building
who
a
will
network. Yep.
buy. And when you're
Yep.
19, 18, 20, unless
Exactly.
you're in an affluent area and all of your friends come from money, you're not
Yeah.
really going to be selling houses to your friends.
Yeah. Or on
So
that team that has, those leads, like you're part of someone's team and they trust you because they have a team lead and all that. So it's difficult.
yeah, it's gotta
Yeah.
be. This kind of, in a way, brings us to our next
Hmm.
prompt, which is how does communication play a role in your job? And I want to be clear here that you it it is obvious to me that you have to communicate with people in
Very,
your
very,
network if you want to
yes.
survive.
Very
And
much.
so if you want to go more in depth or give specific examples or just generally kind of respond, feel free.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I could hit two birds on one stone with those prompts actually. Communication's obviously very, very important in real estate. Communicating with the other agents, with the title company, with the clients, most importantly, right? Letting people know what's going on with their listing or with the offer. And in this, I would say this society that we have of instant gratification, everyone wants response immediately, right? And it's kind of hard to control that if I can't get responses from other people, right? So I can do my best to give clients responses, but if I'm waiting for the other, agent or title company, it's a little bit difficult. But it's always, I would say primarily now it's like texts and emails for something that's very important, phone call, but most of the work is really a lot of screen-based texts and emails lately. And going on the communication part, it's instant gratification, but I think it's a little bit hard to set boundaries too, for myself, but also for clients and agents because everyone thinks, hey, it's 24/7. You don't have office hours, right? I know some agents that are very successful that do have set hours. They try not to do anything after 5 or 6. They have a family, husband, wife, kids, dogs. They have a life, right? Not to say that I don't have a life too, but for me, it's, you know, I would say I'm more cognizant of, I would say my clients that, okay, during the day, it might be a little bit quieter on certain days, but other days might be busier in the evenings after they're off work. So I have to kind of adjust that, and have calls at 7 or 8 o'clock at night or, emails at 9 or 10 if it's something very important. So setting those boundaries, it's a little bit difficult for me personally because I like to always be, on the go, responsive to my clients' needs. If it's something that's not immediate though, lately I have found setting some boundaries. Well, okay, I'll respond the next morning. I'm watching a movie with my family, we're having dinner with my friends, where it's a little bit healthier for me to set a boundary where it's not something super pressing. But it is a kind of an industry of, hey, kind of a response ASAP sort of thing. So it's always, stay on top of communication. And if you don't have an answer, just, tell people it's like, hey, waiting for an answer. But it's like a 24/7 open, never closed industry.
And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I had about the industry. I was like, oh, most of the jobs I've worked that are conventional jobs have had set schedules, set hours.
Nope.
I leave job. And I noticed your subtle shade. Don't think I missed it when you were like, I don't have office hours. Yeah, I do have my designated office hours. That's
I
how
didn't
I
think about
establish
that, but
boundaries.
now it's a little bit subtle then.
No, jokes aside,
That's pretty funny.
that was really funny. I appreciated it. I was like, ooh, I gotta
Unintended.
say
That's
something.
funny.
Jokes aside, I think that what you're communicating about is your experience, and I appreciate you being so honest about this reality, setting boundaries as being crucial to you managing mental health, prioritizing, still being able to have a life while also
Yeah.
having a job. And I think that many of us struggle with this even outside of me having office hours. I
Yeah.
get emails from students at 10 p.m., 1 a.m., high anxiety, and they just want like an immediate response. And I'm
Yep.
like, no. So I've also similarly learned to set boundaries and say, like, I don't respond to emails past a certain time unless it is something really urgent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, So I think
And
that
it's,
those, oh, mhm.
I'm sure I'm speaking for you as well, but it's, it's difficult to be, want to give our best, and be like kind of like, white glove concierge service. Like that's what I'm here for. But it's also, hey, also human, want to, I think, clients and students, do respect that, but sometimes it's not respected.
Totally, 100%. And
Yeah,
I love that you called attention to the instant gratification culture that we live in,
yeah,
where we want things, we want them now, and we don't understand why it can't happen fast.
yeah,
And I think that that also it doesn't account for the reality that we're human. And I think a lot of people experience burnout
yeah,
because they're constantly trying to output fast enough and enough and also people can burn out from constantly being stimulated and
yes,
having their
yes,
anxiety heightened, their emotions heightened. If that stays consistent, that can also lead to burnout.
yeah.
It's
Especially,
intense.
I know real estate's a very emotional industry. For me, I like to take the emotion out of it for my clients because my job is to watch their back, watch their, their finances, their house. It's usually the biggest purchase of someone's life. So I like to, take the emotion out of it. And that's what I'm here for, watch their back, their interests. But for clients, it's always, they might think it won't be emotional, but whether they're a first time buyer or an experienced investor, it's always emotional in some sense. It's, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of, investment. It's just a big moment in their lives and it does, get to people. So I like to kind of take a step back and, just see the facts and not be emotional about it because I can't add more stress and emotion to my clients' lives. Like my job is to, be the sponge, I would say, for for the stress. Tell them don't stress out, put the stress on me. That's what I'm here for. Let me absorb the stress. Like, I don't want you to worry about anything.
That is so generous of you. That is so compassionate. And the fact that you are intentional and self-aware and aware that you're working in an industry with people who are very, very stressed, with people whose lives are in many ways going to drastically change
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
It's just
I don't,
very, very admirable, in my humble opinion, that you maintain so much awareness and intention to hold space for people. And I know that that you're saying like, I don't get emotional, but I think part of being in tune with your emotions is also I'm hearing you hold space for people whose emotions are heightened. And so I just wanted to call attention to that, in case anyone's like, wow, no emotion. And if they were paying attention, they
no,
put
no.
the two together already, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's like, it's kind of like for me, it's like, okay, they're buying $1 million house or, it's like their first purchase or they're selling it. It's like, for me, it's kind of like no big deal. It's like, okay, it's, money on paper, right? It's like it's a big transaction. It's like, for me, it's kind of like no big deal because I know what I'm doing. And it's like, I have my client's best interest at heart, right? For them, it's, like you said, their lives are changing drastically, right?
Yeah.
And there's no room for me to be emotional to them like that. It's like be stressed out to them where I do show emotions, for the better or the worse, right? And there's very few instances where I have gotten, very angry. It's to the other agents, it's like if there's cause for it, or, but that's where I would show my more emotions more to the other agents because
Mm,
usually in a transaction, there's one bad party, not to go into too nitty gritty, but it's usually not my clients, but it's usually, okay, the other agent or the other client is kind of, not great. There's like one cog that's like not, working in the machine, right? And the other agent's client may be that one usually, and they know it. So it's kind of like a balancing act on a wire, right? It's like we can't be, yeah, too demanding, but
yeah. That's intense. And I want to lead us forward into the next prompt based on this, which
yeah,
is the reality of the cost of housing in the city. And I
yeah,
certainly am not in a position to be purchasing. I think many people are not. Many people are angry about that
yeah,
reality. I think many people have a lot of different feelings about the housing market, especially those who are like you and I who have witnessed it, just the prices skyrocket.
Yeah,
Um, and a lot of my students who come from all over the world, really, um, are shocked. They're like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, everything is just so expensive here. So I did pull up a statistic, and I guess as of September 2021, San Francisco was the most expensive city in the United States to live in. I think New York surpassed only by
mhm.
like a very, very tiny amount.
It's
Um,
always neck and neck.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I feel like they fluctuate back and forth. New
yeah.
York surpassed in October. And as of December 2021, the median house is sold for $1 million in San Francisco. That to me is telling me owning a home, having like long-term housing is like not a housing security in terms of being a homeowner isn't an option for me as a teacher. So do you want to kind of speak more to that reality, the market, some of the barriers that keep people um,
Yeah.
from
Um,
accessing housing?
well, I guess just on that housing data, for a house in San Francisco, for a two-bedroom house, it would be about 1.4, $1.5 million for an actual house, the average, price. And for three bedrooms, high ones, four bedrooms, low to mid twos. Anything under, well, here's a little question for you. What do you think is considered like the threshold, like the limit for like an entry level budget, I would say? Like just for a young couple or a family, like what's the upper limit for like entry level? Not first time buyer, but like what's considered affordable?
I'm not sure because I know that in San Francisco, $100,000 income for a family is considered poverty.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know the answer to that question because no matter what I say, I'm probably going to be wrong.
So anything under $3 million is considered entry level. So let that sink in. It's kind of crazy. It is crazy. Um, for a house, anything under $3 million. For condos, it's a little bit less. Condos are little bit less desirable for families, but for a house, anything under 3 million in the Bay Area in general, though, San Francisco, San Mateo County, San Jose is going to be, you know, enough people can afford a house under $3 million, and that's saying something right there. It's like there's something wrong with the market right there. In East Bay, it's anything under 2.5 million. It's considered very, very affordable, like Oakland, Alameda County. And then in Marin, it's, a little bit more, it's a little bit more expensive. But the Bay Area is, the geography is a little bit, spread out. So there's a lot of thresholds that can be considered affordable. In other places of the country, of course, you can buy a mansion for $3 million. It's crazy.
This is crazy. And the entire time for listeners who are participating in the podcast, I have just been making shocked faces. And I don't know why, because I think I knew this. And me as a teacher in San Francisco, I just feel kind of like, why am I living here? What? This is
Um,
crazy. That is so. Ay,
yeah,
ay, 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 ay.
yeah. Well, the things that keep the Bay Area so expensive, though, I mean, obviously there's lots of, well-paying jobs and, people have savings,
Heck,
family money, they can afford the houses here. But the reason why housing is also so expensive too is lack of construction and politics. Local politics, neighbors, local laws, geography, it all kind of contributes into, it's not just one reason, right? It's like your neighbors don't need to build, or, the local laws or geography. It's all these things kind of go together. It's like San Francisco, 7x7, where are you going to build, right? The peninsula, much more room to build, but also a little bit more restrictive. Also, the cost to build is very, 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 very expensive. It'll be a lot of money to build a house from ground up compared to building, new condos, right? So all these things, it's like the local laws, the neighbors, geography, the cost to build, they kind of all go together to making the Bay Area very expensive to live because there's no new inventory, right? The prices can't come down because there's only so many properties. Like there's one house, 20 people want it. What are you going to do, right? 19 people. Okay, add to that the next year, that same house is going to be 25 people that want it, right? One family gets it, the next year it's going to be the same thing over and over again. So that's why prices keep going up. There's no new inventory really. The demand's always there, and there's no new houses really for sale. It's very limited. People live here for many different reasons, right? Why do we live here? It's fantastic. So I mean, some people might not agree the Bay Area is a great place to live, but a lot of people who live here do. So compared to London or Sydney or Hong Kong, other world-class cities, I wouldn't say we're quite there yet, but we are definitely world-class city. We're one of the cheapest if you look at it on a price per square foot basis, compared to those cities. So I think
I don't care. That doesn't help me buy a house.
it doesn't. But one of those biggest barriers to buying a house, and there's a lot of discrepancies, I would say, and I work with a lot of first-time buyers that think, hey, I can't ever buy a house. Last year, I had at least 3 or 4 deals, especially with some personal friends of mine, that actually got a house, particularly in Oakland, in really great areas in Oakland, actually, for quite under asking, and probably have $200,000 to $300,000 in equity because I got them really, really, really good deals. Great timing in the market, took advantage of certain deals, and it worked out for them. But it's just really knowing the market, knowing where the deals are, and then knowing how to get in the market. And getting in the market, the biggest barrier is really the down payment. So not really the income, it's really just, do you have enough money to put the down payment for the loan? Yeah.
That's what I've learned as well, that many
Yeah.
people are like, I have the income,
But
but
it's,
my
yeah.
humble understanding of this industry is that you have to actually have a large amount of money up front.
Depending on the house and the area, right? It could be as low as 3.5%, 3%, 5%, which is not a lot if you think of it that way. But then if you look at the price of the house, it could be a lot, right? If you're looking at $1 million house, what's 5% of that? $50,000, right? So, and then reserves, and then the lender might want you to have a year's worth of reserves, so add another 70,000, right? So it just depends. But the biggest impediment is the down payment. And that's a whole lending conversation, which I won't get into because I'm not a lender, but that's the biggest barrier, I would say.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're covering a lot. Are you okay if we move forward?
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you for recognizing your boundaries and limitations with the knowledge that you put out into the world, while also speaking to some of that stuff. Okay, so, oh, well, we covered some of these other things. That we covered some of the other prompts that I had prepared for you. Now, let's skip to, um, oh, I mean, yeah, we did a lot. We covered a lot of this. How about tips to help people who are looking to rent
Mhm.
or buy in general, doesn't have to be the Bay Area, tips for people to prevent being taken advantage of?
Yep. For renters, I wouldn't say renters use agents. There's not many agents that work with renters. So I would say just really read the fine print, know the local laws, know the landlord, or not the landlord, the tenant attorneys, because there's tenant attorneys and landlord attorneys. And usually they work with just tenants or just landlords. So know the laws. And luckily in the Bay Area, we have a lot of legal firms, especially some that are pro bono, that actually protect the tenants. So know what your rights are and know what the landlord's rights are if you're a renter, right? There's things the landlord can do that you think they might not be able to do. There's a lot of things that they can't do that you think they can do. So know what you're getting into and read the fine print, and know the leases. Don't just sign everything willy-nilly. So, read the fine print. That's the biggest thing for renters, I would say. And don't be afraid to negotiate too. If it's a space, if it's a space that's not rent controlled, so if it's like a newer condo that's market rate, some places might be cheaper because they aren't getting as many tenants right now, with people, wanting to avoid very expensive, rentals in the city that they can't go enjoy everything like they used to during the pandemic. So read the fine print and don't be afraid to negotiate for renters.
I can speak to that as a
Yeah.
renter in the Bay Area for the past 6 years, 6-ish years, that I used to be so afraid of thinking that I had any power or agency in these conversations. I used to think I should just be grateful for what I get. I should just be grateful that I have housing. And while everything is so competitive and there is so much demand,
Hmm.
I don't want to make like a fuss. And what I've learned over the 6 years of being a renter is that you absolutely have the right to negotiate,
Yep.
to clearly read your lease agreement with your landlord and say, this part doesn't make sense. Can we revise it or even omit it? Can we
Hmm.
delete it? Can we edit, modify? And I think that it's so helpful to hear you say, know your rights.
Hmm.
Like I've dealt with eviction, I've dealt with
Yep.
so many different things that I never thought I would deal with that
Yeah.
um, led me to learn about my rights. And so I will definitely put links to the SF Tenants Union in the description for this episode. For
Yeah.
sure.
Every city and county has their own tenants union too. So they're definitely great resources to start out. And then for people looking to buy or sell, have a good agent. That's all I can say. Because there's a lot that I can go into for that, but it's like really have a good agent because they'll have your back. So
And also tips to avoid getting scammed.
um when buying or selling, well
Well,
actually
even when
for
renting,
both,
just
this
when you're
is
in the housing market, like
yeah, this is the one tip that's most important actually for scam. There's really not many scams that I see. I've never been involved in a scam. I've heard of scams happening. But this goes for renters or buyers. Be careful when you wire money, um, because I always tell my clients, my buyers and sellers, I'm never going to ask you to wire money because wire fraud is real. People are spoofing landlords, sellers, buyers, escrow companies, agents, like they're spoofing their emails and pretending to be them, or they're hacking in. So don't wire money unless you really confirm who they are with a phone call. If you get an email, make sure, hey, did you send this email, and who's actually asking you to wire money, because there's only 2 times in a deal where the buyer ever has to wire money. And that's why I tell them. So I tell them, I'm never going to ask you. So no, if you get an email from me telling you that, it's a lie. It's not real.
what are those times?
For a buyer, it's the earnest money, the security deposit. So when you're, buying a place, you put usually 3% of the purchase price into escrow. And then at the end, when you're wiring the rest of the down payment. And then for a renter, the same thing, I'm assuming. It's like, okay, here's a security deposit. And then, you give the month's rent and all that. So just be very careful with
I
that.
want to speak to this because I actually called you about this last year.
Yeah.
So I was looking to rent a space and the website, the ad had photos, had a
Yep.
legit person that I was communicating with. They even sent me like a lease to my lease via email, etc. So everything was looking legit. And then they said that they wanted a security deposit. Now, let me
Mm-hmm.
be clear. I had not met this person in person,
Mm,
nor had I viewed the property. So those were two red flags for me. I was like, I haven't seen the property yet, and they're already trying to get me to sign the lease and send the
mm-hmm.
money.
Yep.
And I haven't met the person, and it just started to feel a little questionable.
Yep.
Then they insisted that I send them money for the security deposit within like 24 hours. And that made me feel even more conflicted because I I felt like I was having unnecessary pressure put on me to send them
Yeah.
money and not even getting a chance to see the property.
Exactly.
And in all my 6 years of renting in the Bay, I have always
Yeah.
been encouraged to go view a property either with an agent or
Yep.
with the landlord who will actually take me
Yeah.
through.
Correct.
And that to me feels like the correct process, the way that people should
Yeah.
go about it. And so if you are newer to renting in the Bay, definitely insist on either doing a virtual tour
Yep.
or an in-person tour before sending any
They're
money.
not gonna want you to wire the money anyways, because it'll be a house to return it and everything if you back out. So it's like always go see the property. They're not gonna accept an offer like if you're buying, if you don't see the property usually. So same with
It-
renting. It's like they want you to
It's
see
just
it and then not
wild.
make a hassle for everyone. It's like both sides. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And this person ended up asking for gift cards.
big red flag also. Never, never buy gift cards or anything like that.
They were
Bitcoin,
like, go to
whatever.
Walmart, buy $500 worth of gift cards, and then
Yeah.
meet me. And I was like, okay, this is a scam.
Yeah. It's usually a check or like a wire
Okay.
deposit at a bank. Yeah.
Yeah, just wild. All right. Now we're coming to a close, and I'm sure that I'm going to invite you to be a guest again in the future
No,
because
thank
you're
you.
so fun. Your voice is so calming, and you have so much insight to share about this industry. We've
I
barely
know.
touched
Scratch
on
the
it.
surface. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts? Would you like to clarify anything you said earlier? Would you like to add anything, or
It's not as hopeless as it would seem. I mean, it seems like a crazy market and it is a crazy market. But there's always hope at the end of the tunnel, really. So whether you're looking to buy or rent, it just depends what your needs are. And at the end of the day, that's what I always tell clients. It's always about your needs. So find what's right for you and, make it work somehow.
and by making it work somehow, you mean have them contact you?
Yes, have them contact me.
Or yeah, we'll
No, but
we'll
I always tell clients that it's like, I'm not here, to blow smoke. I always am here for your needs and not be like a pushy salesman. So it's like, you know, find someone who can help you like that. So it's like, you're looking to buy or sell, obviously feel free to contact me. Happy to tell you, not sugarcoat anything. It's like, this could be possible, or this won't be possible, right? And if you're looking to rent, same thing. It's a little bit easier with renting, I think, than with buying, but they both present their challenges, really, very unique sets of challenges. But yeah, not all hope is lost. There's lots of resources and help for, buyers or renters.
including the San Francisco Affordable Housing Act. And affordable housing can be purchased through the city of San Francisco. It's a
Yes, the
lottery
BMR
system.
program.
Mhm. It's a
Yep.
lottery system. You apply, they review all the applications, and you might be able to get a house at an under market rate.
Yeah. Now they're set by law. There's certain units within buildings, especially new construction, that are set like reserved for the BMR program. And sometimes, the lottery, a lot of people sign up and 5 names gets called and then no one wants it, or they're not around, or situation change, and then you get lucky, or you could be the first one called. So it's literally luck of the draw. So
Let's talk about BMR housing in another episode.
okay, yeah, that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, you're great. I am
No,
so
thank you.
appreciative of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, some folks have learned a new thing or two about this industry.
Oh, and I'll drop my contact info.
Oh, you can just email it to me.
Okay.
Mhm. And I'll add it in all the bios.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good day.